right, so we're going to give this just a moment here while everybody joins. I know we're sharing out now onto a couple different platforms, so no matter where you're watching, if you have any questions, post them. We're trying to keep as much monitor on those as we can and bring them back into the session. Easiest way is always head over to mspinitiative.com or to our Facebook. Join the session live on the Zoom, and you can ask away, and we'll try and answer as many of them as we can. And if you are in the session, as always, we monitor the chat, we monitor the QA. So if you have any questions, you want to stop us, feel free to ask away. So now, without any further ado, I'm going to kick things off. So thank you again for joining us for another session of the MSP Initiative. I'm excited to be joined here by a friend and colleague, James Bier. Worked with James for quite a while in the space. If you have not heard of James before, he's with a company called VAR Staffing. They have a great history in the space of hiring and recruiting throughout the, honestly, entire technology field in both the vendor and MSP side of business. So James, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit. I know the VAR Staffing name's got some cool history behind it, so I'll let you go ahead and take that for a second.
Well, thanks, Alec. It's actually good to be back. I think we launched this program together about a month, 5-6 weeks ago, something like that. So this is kind of my second go around at it. First time on Facebook Live, so it's good to be here. And James Bier, co-founder, Chief Channel Development Officer for VAR Staffing. We are a boutique staffing and consulting firm specializing primarily in the channel space. We work primarily with VARs, MSP, solution integrators of all sizes. And this is certainly a dynamic time to be in that field, and certainly gives us a bit of a unique lens in our patch. I know that you guys at BVoIP have an international touch. We focus really U.S. domestic only. So we come at this with a lens of what the domestic U.S. partner is looking like. So, and again, it's a very interesting time in our the history of our economy here. Certainly, it's been a very robust wave that we've been riding over the last probably 3 to 4 years, and you could maybe even stretch that out to probably closer to 5 to 7 years. It's been quite the boom. And then, come really, I guess you can chart it to mid-March, really like that March 15th window. Certainly the quarantine set in on most, and the pandemic is being realized by partners of really all sizes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you touched on something good there. This is our second go around of this. The first session we were on our previous platform was a little bit hard to get to. But I think we had some really great content. So I want to bring some of that back, and I want to touch on a little bit of what this has looked like. Obviously, for all of us, I think in our day-to-days, whether it's, am I going to the grocery store, am I going to an office, anything, it's all down to a day-to-day kind of churn right now. When we first started talking about this, I sat down with our founder and just talked about what are the hot topics, what are you seeing, what do we want to bring to the MSP market? And one of the biggest ones was HR perspective. What are people dealing with? Unfortunately, with an economic turn like this, there's a lot of differences around what if I have to get rid of people? What if things are good? What if I'm dealing with an industry that's booming and I need more people? And it's a weird time for that. So, you were one of the first people I thought of to talk about what are you seeing? So let's start at the beginning. When this hit, we talked about it right away. You said, don't stop hiring. Because there is definitely a time frame that it takes to get somebody through the door and post the job and everything like that. But what kind of trends have you seen between then and now, and maybe kind of talk about the differences there? We'll start with that.
Well, what we saw really at the beginning, call it 6 weeks ago, was a strong push for the work from home concept, which thankfully our channel, most of our partners that we work with, really embraced that strategy already. A portion, if not all of their workforce, was able to work and remotely support end user clients from a work from home scenario. But now small to medium sized businesses that maybe didn't embrace a work from home concept or strategy were forced to do so. Our channel as many of our partners know, are at the forefront of being able to really deploy this concept, have clients work from home. And we saw that really for the first 2 or 3 weeks. We had partners that just, they couldn't, their queues were full. They couldn't have enough talent, enough staff on hand to be able to satiate what their clients were calling for. We have seen that phase, I think, kind of ride through. A lot of our partners now report, things have stabilized. The setting up remote offices for their clients, they've by and large been successful in accomplishing that task. And they've also been rewarded. We've seen that a lot, that it has been able to really shine a light on what a solution provider can do for their end user clients, and it's really shown through. So I think in most states, the IT services has been deemed an essential service, but certainly now more so than ever, when you're reliant on somebody to be able to have you access your email and you can't go into your office downtown, you're stuck in your home office environment. I would argue that there's very few things that are more essential than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw that a lot. What we've seen on the phone side was initially there was obviously that major craziness of people ripping phones out of the wall, just heading home. I think since then, and once it's calmed down and people are into this day to day, and it's now the norm, we're now seeing a lot of people are saying, hey, that office is empty for probably the only time it ever will be like this. And I can get in there and I can rip out the infrastructure. I can do so many more projects that usually we'd be paying overtime. We'd have people coming in on weekends. All of that is able to be done now and set up and done so much more efficiently. I think that's an important thing I'm starting to see a lot of people turn to in this time. So I agree with that. I think there's definitely a big need for work right now. We asked this last time, but I'd love to hear if your answers changed. So if I was hiring 2 months ago, if I was gearing up to put a bunch of job postings up and hiring some different level techs or another role within the organization, do you stop? Let's start with, should I be recruiting?
Yeah, it's a great question. I caught your session on Tuesday, Alec, as a matter of fact, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I know your guest Paul, he was big into sort of that the metricing and getting utilization out of your staff. And one of the things that we've seen, we have partners all over the domestic U.S. as I mentioned yesterday. In fact, I was an East Coast partner, had a good conversation, and he posed a question to me. He's like, "What are you seeing now?" One could think that there would be sort of an abundance of talent. The fish in the pond have been stocked higher than maybe so than ever. But what we found is actually what's happening is the really valued A players on, let's call it a support desk. If you've got a top performer on your help desk or your NOC, that performer, that technologist has now actually been elevated in the organization. They've been recognized as the top performer. They've been, in some cases, incentivized. Hey, look, we can't, here's extra money. Here's a spiff. Here's a bonus, completion bonus, whatever it may be. It's top performers that really have helped our solution provider partners be able to get through this initial tidal wave of ticket requests. What we see that sort of gets cast aside, especially over the last probably month, are sort of the lower performers, the ones that were punching a clock, the ones that may have been for whatever reason really strong at one particular function. Maybe it was their email guy, or in your case maybe the phone guy, but they didn't really take an initiative, or they didn't really take any type of really proactive measures to grow themselves as a technologist. sure, they were great at this one function, but they proved for whatever reason that they weren't willing to really expand their horizon as a technologist, and they're the ones that have gone into the pond, so to speak, to fish from. So the really, really solid A players, those are the ones that in many ways have become even more difficult to engage with, because A, they're too busy, and B, they've gotten some of this recognition and some of this compensation that they felt was perhaps lacking, which would have enticed them to maybe explore a new opportunity eight weeks ago versus 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And, I think that's something that we'll probably see happen for a little while here. I'd imagine those A players are definitely being recognized, and, those are the ones who are going to be leading the project to move people home, and, all these major plays that are happening right now in the space. So let's talk about that process, though. So I do need somebody. I'm ready to recruit.
Yeah.
How the heck do I go about doing it remotely? Is it Zoom? Is there assessments? I mean, what is the best way?
And I apologize, I drifted a bit from your question before. Yeah. So if your metrics are there, and let's just say on March 1, you had a need at whatever level that was. A normal recruiting process, non-pandemic, where we've got normal office intake, and people can come and go as they please. We typically like to see that run in a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. So that's about a 14 to 21 day churn, if you will, from insertion through the interview process to offer, and then once somebody is extended an offer, the whole process takes right around a month typically. So we have seen both ends of the spectrum here. Obviously, with some of the to dovetail off your question just now, what does the process look like now in a COVID type hiring environment? Typically we see most insertions begin with a phone screen or an interview, followed up by some level of testing, maybe a deeper dive technical vet. And then there has always often been a final piece to that, which is, walking the office, coming in, seeing the environment, getting to see what it looks like, what your team members, what your peers, what your subordinates, what your contemporaries would look like. That piece obviously is challenging for a lot. So we've seen it be Zoom as a platform like we're on right now will oftentimes suffice for that. We were often big proponents of getting to know a candidate on a personal or social level. We would always preach as sort of a final step, if you will, maybe a happy hour, a lunch, a dinner, oftentimes bringing your spouse along, which will allow the candidate and their significant other to really get to know what the work environment's like, what the team that your significant other would be spending all of their time with. So that piece has definitely changed. So now one thing I'm pleased to report on, and I like to think of myself as an optimist, but this week we're in Texas. For those that don't know, we're in Dallas, but our governor has quote unquote reopened our state. And we have seen a huge influx this week of legacy partners that have reached out to us and say, we need to add. So we've had 4 partners this week really coming out to us to say, okay, it's time for us. And one of the talking points we had last session, Alec, you and I, was that, my prediction was that at some point, we're going to, it's going to be flat. And then my hope is that we take that hockey stick projection up. Now, I'm an optimist. I know without having to be told that this is not a blanket statement. And make no mistake, we have partners that are deeply affected by the pandemic. But I can tell you and our audience that I have seen an uptick of requests, unsolicited requests too, by the way, because that's another challenge we have. As our product marketing our product to people that may or may not be in a position to grow is tough. So we're fortunate, I guess I would say blessed, that we do work with a partner community, and the partners that engage with us, by and large, are more mature organizations. By and large, want to grow, by and large have recognized that adding staff through a typical job posting, Craigslist, LinkedIn posting is not would probably not be the most efficient way to do it in a challenging time like this. And even 6-8 weeks ago, before the pandemic set in, it posed a whole different set of hurdles to overcome. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a weird time, and trust me, I think we all hope to see that hockey stick. You know, for us, we're a channel only company, so if our partners grow, we grow, and that's always been, you know, a mantra of ours from the beginning. So, you know, all we want to see is this economy bounce back because it helps everyone. You know, it's interesting here that there is a lot of requests coming through, and that's great. You know, I think it's probably going to vary geographically for a while. I know I'm in New York. We are still very much on lockdown. But, you know, I think the one thing that you hit on there that I'd like to go back to, so you talked a little bit about the people that, you know, are in that job pool today. If you find yourself there, what, you know, do you have a suggestion? Obviously, you're trying to find the most attractive candidates in that pool. What helps somebody stick out? Is it, and at the same front, if I'm an MSP on this webinar right now and I'm looking in all the resumes coming through on, you know, a job posting site, because maybe I'm not ready to go through a recruiter, what am I looking for? Is there something, a certificate? Is it, you know, a certain background?
Good question on both sides of the fence. If you're a solution provider looking to add, or if unfortunately you are a technologist that coming out of a solution provider that may be looking for their next home, you know, really what we like to see, what we seek, what we covet, is somebody that has taken a proactive and a serious, I guess, approach to their career. We like to see career progression. And if you're starting as a level 1 help desk tech or a knock technician or whatever, we like to see people that rise, okay? We like to see people that invest in themselves. I know you're very active with CompTIA. You know, they offer a host of certifications now, none of which are, I mean, these aren't cakewalks, of course, but none are intensive boot camp ridden. It's basically just a snapshot of me capsulizing that I'm proficient and to some degree an expert in this one area, whether that's, you know, the A+, the Net+, the Security+. There's a lot of different obtainable certifications that you can get that shows an employer, or if you are the employer looking for somebody, you know, that A+, that means something. You know, and I know a lot of trade schools, a lot of even some colleges and universities are now incorporating that curriculum into their curriculum. So it's possible in college to obtain some of these certifications while you're studying, you know, or junior college or trade school or whatnot. So these things are not for nothing, and they're not an end-all be-all by any stretch of the definition. But I think it certainly is. It's an attractor to me. It's something that I look at and I like to see. Unfortunately, over the last, call it 5 to 7 years, you know, we've seen less and less. We always like to see contiguous work, hopefully, you know, well tenured. We don't like seeing candidates that hop every 6-8 months. Well, you know, sure, here probably amongst any period of time, certainly over the last 100 years, this could be a reason why, you know, you lost a job. You know, there's 33 million Americans now that are out of work. We hate to see it, but certainly this could be a time and a reasonable explanation as to why you lost your job. But if you've had 5 jobs over the last 5 years and then got caught up with a COVID-related job loss, you know, there could be a lot of smoke there. So again, Looking at a technologist, if you are one, really embrace those, and now online is everything. You can obtain these certifications. If you're furloughed or not working right now, go get an A+ certification. And time again, you'd hear, well, I'm too busy working. I can't go get that certification. Now is a time where maybe you can use that. If you're a solution provider and looking at a candidate that might separate themselves, use that as a variable in a decision process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good you touched on that. I mean, those have gotten huge over the years. I've definitely seen an uptick especially with company embracing things like cybersecurity and areas like that. I think that'll become more and more important as we move. And I like that we kind of approach both angles there, in the personal growth side and the obviously the hiring side. So if someone is in an organization, do you encourage them to get these certifications for their techs?
Well,
do you think it's a good reward system? I mean,
I do. I do believe in the argument too that, hey, look, if you become a paper tiger, right, all you do is take tests. So there's got to be a balance with everything. But the big OEM software providers, Datto, ConnectWise, Webroot, they all offer vendor certifications as well. And it entices them to get your people. A lot of partners may not know that they offer these training sessions, or at least they did, certainly at their user conference for one. And now I would naturally assume that there are online portals even more so than there were before the pandemic, before the quarantine, that will allow you to get these vendor certifications online. And it probably comes with your subscription-based fee. If you have so many licenses, there is some math equation that allows you to get X amount of certifications through your spend, your vendor spend with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know I've seen in some of the MSPs we work with, I've definitely seen this as a reward system, right? I mean, it might be the tech who's answering the most tickets this month, things of that nature. I've definitely seen that when, CompTIA mentions that a lot as a reward system, using those kind of certificates as, listen, further down the road in your career, this could help you here, it could help you somewhere else, but we're willing to invest in that for, top 3 techs this month or things of that nature. So I've always appreciated that kind of model. I think it's good. I think it's always good to get people something to work towards. I do want to quickly just throw over, if anybody has a situation they want to ask about, actually we just got there we go. That was actually just a compliment for you. Tony Francisco wants to know you're very good looking. But if anybody's going through situations right now, you're trying to hire, there's definitely some weirdness to it. If you're trying to go through that process, throw the questions in there, Q&A, chat. We're happy to go through and kind of discuss some of what you're going through and how we can help.
Well, first off, I think Tony was talking about you, Alec, not me. So, Tony's good people. We're glad he's here with us. But yeah, another thing I failed to mention, obviously, is the stimulus package, the CARES Act. That's become a little bit more streamlined, and clearly, when you look at some of the conditions, which we're still sorting out, and I am by no means an expert in the legalese, and I know there's an audit that will be done to determine how much of that is actually forgiven, but certainly the design on that, at least the payroll protection program, is designed to keep small businesses, such as our channel, is designed to keep our people working. As a small business owner myself, we went through the process. We were very grateful that we had a very good, solid banking relationship. So we were able to receive our loan. I've talked to many partners, and we know that as a condition of that, and in fact, I've heard some, and again, I'm not going to speak as an expert on this, but I know if you increase headcount too, there is at least it's a variable in the equation that will go towards forbearance of the payroll protection program. So certainly consult an expert on that, but that's kind of helped I think, stoke the flames that I mentioned earlier. We've had a partner on the East Coast, one in DC, and then two here in Texas that reached out to us this week about initiating net new, fresh search engagements. One, because I think the stimulus package has worked to some extent and has allowed and freed up cash flow for them to be able to add staff and maintain that staff. And two, simply put, that the need is still there. I mean, if they needed them in February, you still need them in May. So we're very fortunate in our industry. We're very fortunate in our channel that we are here to support other small businesses. I think we touched on this last time too. We're entrepreneurs supporting entrepreneurs. So in some regard, I think there's some camaraderie there, some brotherhood, if you will, that goes into the work that the MSP does for their end user client. Everyone's in it together. The MSP is a critical part of the success of that small to medium-sized business. They can't do it without them. And now I'm glad to see, I've seen some petitions floating around that some of that stimulus dollars can go to your managed services. I'm not sure if that's gone through or not yet. I know I personally have signed up with a few of those myself, but it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that going around too, and that's actually a great point. I know I signed that about a week ago or so when it hit my feed. I'd love to see that because it's definitely a part of the infrastructure of our economy that definitely doesn't always get as much attention as it should. And you're right, a lot of these businesses will fail without the MSPs behind them. I've seen horror situations on the end client side that, definitely need that MSP touch.
Yeah, now
we did get a question through here. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Is it a buyer's market post-COVID with the unemployment being so high versus pre-COVID with the unemployment numbers being historically low? And if so, how aggressive can the math get?
So good question. So again, what's happened now is there's what I like to call a white noise factor, that things become saturated, oversaturated now. For those, whoever asked that question, you may have posted a job or had experience posting a job pre-pandemic. And now with the automation tools that are out there for resume distribution on a mass level, using just a keyword scrub was intense. We've experienced that now, during and as we're getting through the crisis, that inflow of resumes will increase 5, maybe 10-fold. And what that does, again, is it muddies the water. It loudens the white noise. So it becomes less and less likely that a job posting is going to net you the candidate that you're actually seeking, simply because the numbers are going to be that much more, exponentially more now with unemployment so high. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Yes, it's somewhat of a buyer's market. It's going to be much more difficult to actually kind of get through the white noise to actually find that diamond in the rough.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's actually a great point. I mean, we're talking about this huge curve. I mean, we were at a historically low time, and I'm sure, honestly, that was not an easy time to recruit in, to go into today. When you look at the recruiting process, do you think in the future, post-COVID, that we're going to see this remote interviewing be a little more common? Do you think that people, I know I saw today just a little while ago on Facebook, somebody was posting about devices that go on the door of your office just to check each person coming through for a fever.
Sure.
And I think we're definitely going to live in a higher tense world with that.
Yep, I think you're going to see that at airports, at stadiums, concert venues. I definitely think that's coming. So, and again, I think that's a small sort of dovetail microcosm of the innovation that our just technology in a whole can provide. The process itself, to your point, Alec, of is this going to radically change the way we interview? I mean, depends on how you define radical. I think that the interview process by and large will remain mostly intact. And again, no two processes are alike. I've preached this for many years. If you have a process that works for you, that's great. If you are finding some difficulties, you're just not able to grab that right hire. You've done this 2 or 3 times. You've had to churn it and backfill it. Well, then certainly there are ways to augment that. Some suggestions that we could provide or other resources could provide. But I see the process more or less being the same. Again, with that one caveat that final touch, that last step of walking in, being able to actually get into the office and immerse yourself in that culture for a 2 to 4 hour window as you make that final choice and they make that final choice on you. Keep in mind, an interview is always a two-way street. When a candidate interviews, they are interviewing the client just as much as a client is interviewing a candidate. But that piece definitely will change. I think it's going to be more and more difficult to post an ad and get that right hit. Not impossible, but I do believe that it's going to be more challenging with a very high unemployment number that, by the way, I do believe will come down significantly quickly once hospitality gets back up and running, once the service industry, restaurants and bars, I think you'll see that number come naturally down. And I was going to mention earlier, we have some partners that are heavy in supporting in the hospitality field. And I know those solution providers are feeling this. And again, we are here to help in any way that I can. It's challenging for those not only those channel partners, the solution providers, but their end users. Restaurants, bowling alleys, movie theaters, these things that are kind of the fabric of Americana, they're hit hard. So
yeah, absolutely. No, and that's definitely something we're going to see, I think, for a long time, unfortunately. Hopefully we'll find the right programs to bring them back. One thing you touched on there was the interviews. And we actually had a question come through. We had a couple questions come through. The first one was around if I'm out there and I am looking for a job, which I know we touched on a little bit earlier on that certification side. But I always like to try and give people something they can take away from this. So let's hit this both in the employer and the employee side. Resume tips. I think resume tips is the first big one we should tackle. The second one would be interview questions. I think both those are always kind of weird ones. The weirdest question I ever got in an interview was, what type of tree would you be if you were a tree? So I've heard some weird ones. Some are really effective to show somebody's personality. Some just kind of seem a little pointless. But, let's take those two. We'll start with the resume. If I'm on the street and I need to put together a good resume, what are some tips you give? And then on the employer side, what am I looking for?
Great questions, by the way. So, and the resume, I can tell you nothing is more maddening when I receive an 8-page resume. So I like to, when you look at a resume, whether you're an MSP reviewing a resume or a candidate putting one together, let's use the KISS theory, the keep it simple, stupid. I remember in college, a few years ago when I was in college, I had a professor that told me, I know of Harvard-educated doctors that have 1-page resumes. It stuck with me all these years now. So believe you me, you have people that try to mesmerize, and I get it now. Again, I mentioned it before with the automation piece. You want to have that keyword in there, as many keywords as possible. But again, I always appreciate, and I know I hear partners tell me all the time, a clean, crisp, concise resume. Don't feel the need to overbake a resume. And it's oftentimes it'll backfire on you. An example could be you did a physical to virtual email migration 10 years ago. So you list on there that you are you've done a migration, you've done, you may be overinflating your experience with, let's call it Exchange or Office 365, when in reality, you were a very small piece or you did this once. So framing up a resume to make it look like that we call it baking a resume, overinflating what it is at whatever level, it most oftentimes will backfire on you, because employers will, oh, wow, I'm looking for this exchange guy. This guy's done this. They're going to go right to that piece. So typically when an MSP or a client, a partner, does an interview, they're interviewing from their position of pain. Well, what's wrong? What am I not getting from this candidate right now? What do I strive to improve upon on this particular role? Okay, well, if they see that in a resume, that may get you the interview, but then you simply fall right on your face. So that's really some really basic, quick advice on a resume. Keep it simple, stupid. I like them crisp and clean. And if you have gaps, a resume gap, both sides of the fence. When I see a resume gap, if somebody worked from March, ended their job in March of 2019 and didn't start again till November of 19, I naturally think they were in prison. So that's a bit of a joke, but when you see a gap like that in there, of course there's a month or two that doesn't need to be accounted for. But when you have a significant gap, let's call it 6 months or above, that's something that you need to figure out a strategy on. Now, I don't like unemployed for 6 months in there, so we can go offline. Certainly, give advice on some topics and some areas where I've seen some improvement on that, and certainly employers. Most do it anyways, but I always look at that with a grain of salt. What was going on? What happened here? Sometimes a family member gets sick and you take a sabbatical. Okay, you can wordsmith that and frame that up so it's pretty evident. So both sides of the fence. Keep it simple, stupid, crisp and clean, contiguous employment. That's my advice on resumes. Interview tips. These are great ones. This is a great question too. And let me go from the candidate first. Candidates so oftentimes get a sterile black and white job description. When we work with candidates, we do a very good job of making sure that they have the actual job description, and more so than the job description, this is what the client is looking for. Okay, so when you interview, you don't need to read back the alphabet soup. We're looking for level 2 help desk, knows automation, knows RMM, knows BDR. So that's not what we're looking for. That should to some degree be a given. We'll prep them and give them sort of the sizzle, is what we like to call it, on what the role is, and that's something that candidates often fail to do. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. Interviewing itself is not a natural process. Get it? To some degree, you're bragging about yourself. To some degree, you're kind of laying yourself up naked in front of a prospective employer, somebody that could be there to really shred you. And I'll get to the employer side on this in a second. So, but make sure that you know the role, that hopefully you've been able to do your research on the client. How many times have I heard from MSPs? It's like, what was most impressive about your candidate is that they actually knew our website and they were able to tell me where we were physically located. It is crazy how many people don't take that step, that 5 to 10 minute step. I do this on, when I'm looking up, TV shows. I know George I've seen him talking about Westworld, which is awful. I would research that. Very disappointed season 3, by the way, George. But it's crazy that people don't take that 5 to 10 minute step of just figuring out, going to the website. People brag. MSPs are really good. They're dynamic about putting this information out there. Do a LinkedIn run. Go to LinkedIn, look at their leadership team. It's information now is at your fingertips. And my 14-year-old son could very easily, find out all this information just by a quick Google search. So take that step. But believe it or not, if you know who they are, what their leadership team looks like, where they're physically located. Do a Google Maps. Oh my God, it's right by the mall. Oh my God, it's right by my mom's house. It's those little nuggets. Those can really separate you from a candidate pool. From the employer side, we too oftentimes see this. When you're interviewing a candidate, we advise interview to actually hire, not to disqualify. So you want the person to interview well. A lot of times we get partners that, again, think they may have the secret sauce, that they want to trick. They want to throw all these, they want to give you a Rorschach test in the first initial call. They want to see if you'll fall into their bear trap. So the advice I always have: go into an interview, especially if you're working with a firm like VAR Staffing, that is designed to bring you qualified candidates. Well, you can assume that if they get there, that there's been a level of due diligence that your staffing partner has gotten you to. Now, if you are doing an ad response that came in off a Craigslist or a career builder posting or whatnot, maybe you do want to add in a couple of more layers or bear trap type questions. But if they're coming in through a partner, and I can speak for VAR Staffing to know that the diligence that we provide, even to one insertion, one submittal, that is a tremendous amount of horsepower up here, of man hours up here to get you even one candidate. Let's interview that candidate with the ideal, with the intention of hiring them, not to trick them up and say, "Oh, gotcha," but because this is a qualified candidate, they look qualified, or you wouldn't be interviewing them. And I think if more MSPs take that approach, interview to hire, not to disqualify, I think that you'll see that the success rate will go up. That's not to say that every interview will go perfect, or you should get over yourself if they don't do well in the interview. No, just have the right approach when you're going in.
Absolutely. So we had a couple questions come in, one that relates to that. So I'll ask that one first, which is, how many interviews are necessary and what's going to be considered overkill?
Sure. Another great question here. So love the audience here. This is a good little thing you've got going, Alec. So, I can frame up what I would call best practices, okay? And it's going to vary from any client. But typically we like to see a three-step process. Step one being some level of an initial vet. And typically we see that being a soft skills, maybe a cultural fit, getting to know them. You've already got a resume, so it's a little deeper than that, okay? Step two, probably some level of technical testing. We see some partners that will actually do a technical test. Some, before the crisis, were embracing sort of a fix-it philosophy, coming in and breaking a computer and saying, okay, come into the conference room and get this onto the internet, or get email upflowing using this criteria. So actually having somebody do a technical test, or here's a scenario, the ticket comes in, how do you handle that scenario? So that's step two. Step three would then be a deep dive technical vet, coupled with what used to be, we would call a face-to-face. Maybe that's Zoom now, but really an intensive scrub. So really 3 steps is what we typically like to see, what we preach best practices. We have some partners that are one interview and that's it, one interview. And that's a mature relationship that we've grown into, and they trust VAR Staffing to be able to bring candidates in. And if they get through the interview, it's a done deal. We have other partners that do a 6 or 7 step. So I would consider that to be overkill. But at the end of the day, I am not the one that is in charge of a hiring decision. Mature, sophisticated MSPs have a process. As I mentioned earlier, I'm here to help consult if needed. But I'm not here to tell you your process is wrong.
Absolutely. So on that, we actually had a question that came through. If I have my employees right now, I know everyone's kind of feeling uncertain, like we said, about many areas of life with the day-to-day of the virus. What is a good way for me to aim to retain my talent? Let's touch on that, during COVID and then post. What are some ways you work with MSPs all over the country? Who's really good at retaining talent? Maybe it's benefits package, it's in-office features. So let's talk to that with the remote workforce and then the in-office.
Sure. So retention is always, sort of it goes hand in glove with what it is that we do. It's sort of a canard that what we do is, revolves into or involves retention. Truthfully, it doesn't. What firms like VAR Staffing do is we provide access to unique qualified candidates that a partner, a client, might otherwise not be able to access. So really, the service that we provide is the introduction of a candidate, okay? And what happens there, we become stewards of the process. We help flow communication, logistics, things like that. But really, the act that VAR Staffing performs, our true service is simply the introduction, is introducing that candidate to that client. So retention is always dovetailed, connected to that endeavor. We know that. So we have seen some clients, some partners that we work with that we believe do have some really good retention tools. That's probably a much deeper philosophical conversation than we have time allotted for today. But by and large, I will say, and I've touched on a couple of these things already, it can't just be money. And if it's just money, that's the wrong retention strategy. I'm just going to throw money at these guys. I can't lose them. I'm just going to throw money on them. What a modern candidate, those A players we referenced earlier in the session, those candidates are looking for opportunities, growth opportunities, opportunities to maybe acquire skills, certifications that are documentable, opportunities to really better themselves as a technologist. Okay. So I always see the opportunity to really become a mentor or a shepherd in the process. That is a really good, and it's practically free to do that. Now, there may be some cost if you have to buy some coursework or some certification stuff, but if you take that concerted interest as an employer and say, and tell that technologist, look, I want to invest in you. What is it that you want to do? Do you want to take your career towards security? Do you want to take your career towards sales? Do you want to take your career towards implementation, projects, whatever that may be? And don't tell them where this is where we think you would be good at. Ask them. Let them come to you and say, cyber is really taking off. This is what I want to do. This is my passion. And then work backwards. Find a way. Let's find a way to get you into that cyber path. Because I've seen this a lot. I suspect some of these people asking the question as well. You've got a guy that's your ticket killer, and he is, he's your ninja, and he's killing it. You cannot afford to lose that bandwidth on your help desk, even though that particular resource really wants to go on another track. He's just too good at his job right now. So I can't even consider moving you on until I find somebody that can, pull your slack when you move along. That's the quickest way to lose an employee, in my opinion. So when it comes to retention, have a genuine interest in your employee, where they want to go, what is that career path? Let them tell you, and then try to work a way together to get there.
Absolutely. No, that was a great answer. I've been looking through. We have a couple of questions here. I want to see how many we can get through, and then if anybody else has any questions, drop them in now. We're going to try and prioritize, and we'll just move through them. So one here is actually a pretty interesting one. I've heard it mentioned a couple times, with all the happy hours and stuff going on right now. What about the concept of MSPs who are maybe in similar circles, user groups, peer groups, et cetera, together, making sure that their employees land in a friendly place they do have to shed headcount?
Yeah, great.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Great question. And I know that we're both involved with the IT Nation peer group community known as IT Nation Evolve, formerly known as HTG. And obviously, those peers are in non-competitive markets. So if you've got a peer group of 10 MSPs, there's not 2 Dallas MSPs in that peer group. So again, being able to access that network using our channel community, peer groups like HTG and Taylor Business Group. There's others out there as well. These are great resources. And trust me, if you have to go through that story propagates. Hey, I was working with Acme MSP, and they did a great job. And he put in the word for me, and I was able to have a soft landing at ABC MSP. And I really owe it to that guy. And being able to have that story, and I know that's something that the IT Nation Evolve community preaches, but being able to do that, being able to reach out, most of the people on this call, I suspect, use ConnectWise or AutoTask for automation. Those are two robust user group communities that we typically engage with, although probably not this year, certainly as we have in past years. But certainly it's pretty easy to find some other ConnectWise users in your region that you may be able to reach out and soft land somebody. So we hope that you don't have to walk down that road or make that choice. And of course, then you're walking a line. Do I strengthen? If I've got to get rid of a really good guy, do I strengthen a potential competitor? Well, again, that therein lies the rub. Culture, investing in an employee, if it's transactional, or if it's truly a cultural long-term play.
Absolutely. One thing I've seen MSPs in certain spaces, and I think these are those scenarios that'll work a little bit better, but I've definitely seen MSPs that maybe I only deal with vertical or banking, and if any other work comes to me for schooling, I pass it up to this MSP. And I think that's one of those scenarios where this idea can work really well. So I appreciate whoever brought that up. I had another interesting one that came through. What do you think about the crossover of MSPs into the vendor area, or vice versa?
So I think it's just off the cuff, a little dangerous. Again, I'm to some degree I'm agnostic, because clients come to me and we work at the discretion of our clients. Make no mistake. So if they want to do that, if they have a business model, if they have a strategy that takes them into that sandbox, then so be it. I think it's a little dicey. One of the things I love about our channel is, and I've mentioned this a lot, is sort of our camaraderie that we have. And then we do come together at IT Nation or DattoCon or ChannelCon, and we're able to collaborate. And peer groups that we mentioned earlier are specifically designed so our entrepreneurs that do lead our industry can sit there and share those ideas with other like-minded peers that are not necessarily in a competitive environment, but that are there, and it does provide a great sounding board to be able to bounce ideas off one another. Kind of blurring the line of supporting channel only, of straying away from that. I think it could be dangerous, but I can't paint that with a full brush.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something I think we've seen a little more over the years, but always interesting to get different perspectives, and obviously with you placing MSPs all over the place, it's good to kind of hear your take on it. So I think that actually was our last question. So I'll leave this open for a second, see if anybody else has any other questions, and I'll turn it over to you. Do you have, first and foremost, you touched on it a couple times, you do a lot of consulting for this, and sure, maybe it's not a full engagement, but maybe it's just helping somebody iron out their process a little bit. What's Absolutely. The best way for somebody to get a hold of you?
Well, VARstaffing.com obviously is our website, where you can Google VAR Staffing, and on all the social platforms, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. We're heavy on LinkedIn, so we're very easy to find. But to your point, Alec, yeah, this is a dynamic time in the history of our country, certainly our economy, and what's important. I have two other partners. There's three partners at VAR Staffing. I'm one of them. We're here to help. We run and operate a small business just like many of our clients, most of our clients do. And we're in it for the long haul. we've been around 20 years. The VAR Staffing brand will turn 10 years old in December. And yes, we will be here in December. We know that. So December 2020, we launched in December 2010. So we're proud of what we've accomplished over those 10 years. And we look forward to working with partners of every size, of every flavor, of every variety. And our mission is, I've said this a couple times, we're here to help, okay? So if anyone has questions and just wants to, a sounding board, what do I do? How do I do this? We're here for you. Our team is designed for that. We are really, I'd like to say this. I hope maybe you could back this up, or Tony Francisco could back this up. But we like to think that we are really the channel experts when it comes to talent acquisition. Really, all we do is eat, drink, sleep MSPs. So we work with over 700. We have 700 partners across the domestic U.S. So we truly believe we're the specialists in it. We believe that the odds are high that if you're going through some challenges, we've probably seen something like it before, and at the very least, we'd be more than happy to engage with and talk with you about how to negotiate some of these challenges.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. And honestly, I know for us, for our partners, for anyone else out there that's just confused by your process, or you just need, just a follow-up to this. If you forgot a question, or there's something about the process you want to ask about, James is a great guy. Reach out. Definitely, they're all over LinkedIn. That's an easy way to get a hold of them. So I think here we are going to start wrapping up. I want to thank everyone for joining us today for another episode of the MSP Initiative. Again, James, I appreciate you coming back. It's always interesting to hear what's going on in that side of the market. I mean, it's a side that I think a lot of people are worried about. So it's good to hear the reassurance and hear, we're seeing good signs out of it.
My pleasure, Alec. And like I said, I'd like to consider myself an optimist, but we've had a really encouraging couple of weeks here, and I definitely, I really hope that we're starting to see that hockey stick, ascend. So hopefully we're getting there.
Absolutely. And the final thing I want to say is, if you haven't been to one of these before, this is your first one. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And on Tuesday, we have another fun guest. We're actually going to have Brad Gross come back. We had such a resounding love for the last session with Brad. So he's got some unbelievable content still there. We could tap into many of his topics he barely touched on last time for full sessions of their own. So we're going to jump into that Tuesday, 1 p.m. Make sure to register. If you haven't yet, head over to mspinitiative.com. See that and upcoming sessions. We're updating that constantly. And we'll see you guys on Tuesday.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, James.